Here you can see what appears to be a transmission leak. Everything's a little wet. This failure is on a 2020 Jeep Wrangler with 40,000 miles on it. We had a troubleshot at the dealer for transmission leak, but in fact they told us it was the oil cooler housing failure, which is tucked right in there. They wanted to replace it with another OEM part, but I opted to just pay for troubleshooting and get the aluminum style Dorman part number 926-959. From everything I read, it's a great alternative and actual permanent repair. Instead of replacing the whole housing with a plastic one, you replace it with this aluminum one. We're gonna get started. First, we're gonna remove the negative terminal off the battery. Next step, remove engine cover. Next step, we're gonna remove the intake. Got 2 bolts up front, 2 worm clamps on each end, connection there, a sensor here, and it's connected to the harness. We're going to leave the sensor and that harness connected and just fold it over to the right once we disconnect the bolts. With our intake removed and put to the side, our next step is the upper intake manifold. Now there is a lot going on here, so we're going to start over here on the left side. It seemed to be the easier of the 2 sides. We're going to start by disconnecting these hoses from the intake manifold. They just pop out. There is a sensor right here. Another hose that'll be coming off. We're going to take this bracket off. And that pipe connects over here, so we're going to disconnect that. See where that gets us. We have our hoses removed. They just pull out. We have this hose disconnected. These are just push style. You push it, pull it. Same way with this one that was connected here. We disconnected the sensor that was plugged in here. Now the wires are held on by little Christmas tree clips. So we'll take a screwdriver, push it in there and pry it up. We had to do the same thing with this one that was mounted in here. We'll go ahead and take this bracket off because it looks like it's in the way of this bolt for the intake. We've got everything on the left side and the center disconnected. Got our harness off the manifold. Got all the pipes disconnected. Got that bracket removed, 2 or 3 10mm. Alright, so we're gonna start on the right side now. We've got electrical connector, 2 Christmas tree clips. We'll take a screwdriver, just pop in there, pop them off. Got a pipe connection here. I'm gonna try a screwdriver, pry it in there. Let's see. We're gonna get this assembly off. Looks like it's got a nut up top. And it looks like 2 nuts down below. It'll be hard to get to, but I think we'll be okay. Another Christmas tree clip there. And an electrical connector here. And another Christmas tree clip back there we'll take off to start on the right side. We've got our electrical connector removed. 2 Christmas tree holders removed. They broke coming off. We'll get them replaced. Got our hose off, large screwdriver worked, just pry it off very easy. Work on these two connectors down here. I just want to show you real quick how these work. You kind of pry that forward, and then you give it a squeeze, and it comes right out. Now we'll get those two Christmas tree clips off, and then work on our valve. Valve is disconnected. It had 3 nuts on it. Really can't see them really good, but a swivel got to them really well. And now we have 2 more nuts way down there. You can see one there, one on the left side, one on the right side. We're going to use a long extension and a deep 2mm to get those 2 off. Then we'll work on the top and try to slide it out. Long extension worked flawlessly to get those 2 out. It's pretty long, works great. Next step, we're gonna be removing the bolts that hold the intake manifold down. We've got 2 10mm up front towards the throttle body. And then it looks like we've got 8 or so over here that we're gonna be getting off. All bolts are out. It was 8 up top. We had 3 large ones, 5 small ones, and then my theory to slide it is not working. So we're gonna go ahead and disconnect this valve. I'm gonna take the electrical connector out. Got 2 10mm bolts back here. I'll probably use a wrench for started that one. Removing the valve was the magic trick. Just 2 10mm bolts on one side. Comes out fairly easy. I grabbed up here on the left, over here on the right, and just pried up a little bit further on the left, and those 2 studs that had it kind of stuck in the back freed it up, and we're about to pull it out and move on. We have the upper manifold removed, now on to the lower manifold. We'll get this insulation out the way. Looks like we've got quite a few bolts around the perimeter. Got a fuel line here. Looks like we've got the fuel injector connectors we're gonna have to remove. First we'll have to pop this red tab up, squeeze, and those should pull off fairly easy. For the fuel connector, what I did, I popped the blue connector up, not sure if that's necessary, took it completely off, then depressed this white tab, covered it with a rag just in case it had any pressure, removed it, came off. Now we're going to start working on all of these bolts on the outside. We're going to try to leave the fuel rails intact and get the connectors off and see if we'll lift off. This is a 8mm fits this. It looks like it's got a star tip, so I'm sure you can use either or. We've got our 8 bolts loosened. We've got all our injector harnesses out. A little closer look. Pop this tab up, and then this little black tab right there, you push it in, and it pulls up. The ones on my right side, I had to get a little creative with a pick. Come in on the back side, depress the little black tab, and then pull up. Also found 2 Christmas tree holders. One right there, and another one right there, that white one. I have to get them off, and it looks like the lower intake manifold will come off. Alright, for these 2, use my handy dandy clip or pick. Got under them, pried it off. Got under this one, hard to see, but pried it up. should just lift out. Alright, so they had another wire connector on the back side I couldn't see. But this right here was connected right there. I just ended up having to cut it off. I couldn't pry it out. But after that, those three on the back, it lifts right up. Lower intake manifold removed, down to the oil cooler filter housing. Gonna get this all cleaned up. Decided I'm gonna go ahead and drain the coolant and oil while I'm at it, just to be on the safe side. I would hate for the two to mix down there, if that's even possible. We're gonna attempt to drain the coolant. I've already drained the oil, that's basic, so should know how to do that, but we're gonna try to do the coolant here. I didn't see a drain cock anywhere under here on the radiator. So this looks like the lower radiator hose. So we're gonna take this clamp off, take a screwdriver, pry it in here, pop it off. We're gonna have some containers below to catch the coolant in so we can reuse it. Oil's drained, radiator's drained. Now, I would not suggest using the method that I just did. I basically took a coolant shower. Was not pleasant, but got the coolant drained nonetheless. We'll have to purchase some more coolant and clean up what I did spill. Got everything cleaned up on the top side. Got my ports taped up so nothing gets in them. Now we're about to use a special socket to get these bolts out. And then once we have it where we can move it around a little bit, take that hose clamp off there to the left, and then get that sensor unplugged. Utilizing an E8 from an E-socket set was the special tool to get these 5 bolts loosened up. I've taken a hose clamper and clamped off the back hose. I've actually wrapped my fuel line because it was starting to smell a little fuel out here, so we bagged that up. Oil cooler is removed. So apparently I did not have enough coolant drained out, so definitely if you're doing this, drain your coolant all the way out. Clamp was a little hard to get to, but managed to get it off. Pull it back, screwdriver, took the hose right off the cooler. Now the sensor, you had to turn the cooler up right, push down the white clip, and then I got a screwdriver right in here to lift the tab and push it off. To clean my mess, I just used a turkey baster. Modified a little bit where it could fit down in the crevices. Got everything majority of the way cleaned up. It's hard to get all the way down in there. We're about to go back on with the oil cooler now that it is all assembled. The oil cooler to oil cooler housing is 106 inch-pounds. The oil cooler housing to the block is 106 inch-pounds. Here's a side-by-side comparison, what we're replacing, and the aluminum Dorman style. We're going to fasten the oil cooler to it using the provided screws. They are a T30 star, just like the engine cover. Provide gaskets, provided screws. We're also going to remove the sensor and transfer it to the new one, and make sure our plug is installed like they've got theirs plugged off. O-rings go in here. O-rings go on the back side for mounting. The oil filter housing is assembled. Got the oil cooler mounted, 106 inch-pounds. Got my sensor installed, 106 inch-pounds. Got my plug installed. Went ahead and put my cap on so I don't drop any debris down in there. Got all my O-rings installed back here. Now I did put a little bit of oil on each one just as precaution. Hopefully it's not a rookie mistake. Going back in with the oil cooler housing. Make sure you've got all your O-rings in. Don't forget about this one on this tube right there. Gonna go ahead and connect up the electrical connector first. Connect the hose, then set it down, install the bolts. Oil cooler housing successfully installed. Oil filter installed. Everything torqued to 106 inch-pounds. There is a torque sequence. It is called the crisscross jiggity jank. Start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all to 106 inch-pounds. But first I installed the sensor and the coolant hose, moved Satan's clamp back in its place, and then set the oil cooler down, making sure all O-rings were installed. Now we're going to get our tape removed and install our lower intake manifold. Those bolts are tightened to 106 inch-pounds as well. Lower intake manifold cleaned up, ready to go. We're just going to install the new O-rings that came with the oil cooler housing kit from Dorman. We got O-rings on the top, 6 O-rings on the bottom. Be mindful of the injectors. Gonna put those O-rings in, get it installed. Each bolt is torqued 106 inch-pounds.
I have an interruption from Carter and Billy. We're doing an OTD because that's more interesting than whatever the heck he's doing. Okay, y'all. So, OTD. Okay. So, we have airport shirts. We got gray pants. We got black belt. And we got striped socks. Your turn. We got airport shirt, pants, socks, and no belt. Because we're trying to find the belt. But that's all with our brief interruption. Bye, guys.
We have the lower intake completely installed. All bolts torqued to 106 inch-pounds. Got our wire connectors put back on with the little Christmas trees back there. Got all our fuel injector harnesses hooked back up. Connectors. Got our insulating pad back in place. Now it's time to install the upper intake manifold. We're going to go back in the same opposite direction we pulled it out. Slide our 2 studs into our 2 points. And of course, make sure our seals are still installed and go from there. Intake manifold sitting down into place. It is a little difficult getting it to sit back in there and line up with the studs where they go into this bracket back there. But I'm just kind of sitting in there, put the valve in loosely where I can work the gasket, and then the bolts back on here. Then I'll fully set the intake manifold down into position and then finish installing the valve. And then putting in all bolts up top. Upper intake manifold installed. All upper intake manifold bolts are torqued to 62 inch-pounds. Next, we're going to install the bracket. Reinstall the sensor. Work our way back down. Finish installing the nuts on the valve. Wire connection for it. 2 nuts on the studs down here that hold the intake manifold to the bracket. We're going to work our way back to the throttle body. Connect the harness. Connect the hose. Got a little creative to get these nuts on over here on this side. For the valve, used a little magnet on the end of a stick, taped it to it. Put the bolt to the magnet, or the nut to the magnet. And then just work it back there. And turn it with my fingers. There, we've got all our mounting points on the right side tightened up. We had 3 on the valve, 2 on the bracket holding it in down below. Tightened up our 2 right beside the throttle body. Connected our harnesses. Placed the Christmas tree clamps back in place. Got our bracket installed with the 3 bolts. Hose connected back to on the upper intake manifold. Christmas tree clamp back in place. Now we're going to work on the left side. Got the electrical connector. Got to get the little Christmas tree clamps back in place down there. Hose goes into this port. Of course, this goes to the intake pipe. Haven't put that in yet. Of course, push our hoses back into the 2 slots on the upper intake manifold. And we'll be ready to install the intake pipe. That was the final piece to install, the intake piping. We simply folded it back from where we had it laying at over there. 2 bolts up front, 2 worm clamps, 1 on each end. The pipe to put back on. And of course, we installed our cover. Just had the 2 T30s on each side. Final steps are to put the oil filter into our brand new housing. It came with a new O-ring. We're going to coat the O-ring with oil, coat the oil filter O-ring with a little oil, top off with our 5 quarts of oil, fill our coolant system, test fire, and go from there. That is how we completed the install on this 2020 Jeep Wrangler. Everything went well. Could have done things a little different, a little more efficiently, but overall it went pretty well. Pretty lengthy job. Take your time. Make sure you get everything installed that you remove. Any comments, please comment below. Subscribe, give it a like. Until next time.